on empowering early years SENDCos and the new qualifications and funding pathways for the NCFE reform qualifications. Today, got myself, Andrew Barton. I'll be giving an overview on the qualifications available and the funding available for these qualifications later on in the webinar. But we've also got our Sector Manager of Education and Childcare at NCFE, Janet King, who I will pass on to in a minute, and she's going to be leading the discussion and panel part of the webinar. Just a few things to note: if you have got any questions, you can pop them in the chat or the Q&A section of Teams. Also, the webinar will be recorded and it will be sent out to everybody who signed up after the webinar. So we'll get straight into it. So Janet, I'll pass on to yourself.
Okay, Andy, thank you. Thank you so much. And extend that very warm welcome to everyone who's taken time out from their busy days to be able to join us on this webinar today. I just want to say a little introduction to our esteemed panel and how grateful I am that they've been able to join us to give that diverse perspective of how the SEND qualifications from NCFE Cash have really supported them in their role and from their own perspective. So it's great to be able to welcome Sian Marsh. Is the Director of Early Years and Initial Teacher Training at Best Practice Network. So welcome, Sian. And also great to be able to welcome Maria from London Early Years Foundation. And we're going to hear Maria's experience in her role as SEND manager in relation to the SEND qualifications, and a warm welcome to Victoria, who is a member of staff at Bushy Tales Nursery and Preschool, where she also works as the SENDco, and it's fantastic to be able to hear that from a student perspective in terms of being the learner of the SENDco qualification and how that's impacted the job that she does as SENDco at Bushy Tales. So the warmest welcome to our panel and a fantastic warm welcome to everybody on the webinar today. So let's take a look at the qualifications themselves and think, I suppose, first of all, let's just remind ourselves, get in the zone as if we had to. I'm sure you're all very aware of the role of the SENDco in early years, but this is, it's a level 3 practitioner across that early years sector, private, voluntary and independent settings. And it's also, of course, relevant to childminders. It's an important role to ensure the best possible educational outcomes are achieved for children with special educational needs and disabilities. And that, of course, is a small paragraph there that has such significant meaning when we're working with babies and children and their families. The SENDco has a fundamental role, and I think it's really important that we appreciate and acknowledge that in terms of this is not just a role that somebody is simply interested in. This is a role that needs to be taken extremely seriously, and it does have a massive impact on the experiences of the young children that we're working with. So it's great that qualifications will build on that interest and be able to actually meet the requirements of an early years SENDco according to what the DFE is telling us. So the early years SENDco role involves ensuring all practitioners in the setting understand their responsibilities to children and the setting's approach to identifying and meeting special educational needs, advising and supporting colleagues. So it's not just about having that knowledge yourself, but it's about having the confidence to be able to advise and support the colleagues that you're working with. And ensuring that parents and carers are closely involved throughout and that their insights inform any action taken by yourselves within an early years setting, as well as liaising with professionals and agencies beyond. And of course, that will demand developing own practice. There is absolutely no one who can say that they know everything there is to know about SEND, and even the greatest experts in SEND related areas will be the first, I'm sure, to admit that actually we're dealing perhaps with legislation that we might be able to understand, but actually do we understand the complex needs of every individual child? Absolutely not. Do we understand how that young child is feeling every single day, or within different minutes or hours within that day, and how that might be impacted by the SEND? Absolutely not. So this is a massive, massive undertaking. So when we say that we're working as the SENDco within the early years setting, it's a massive, massive undertaking. And so this training is to give that confidence and to give that sense of knowing really, and having the confidence in what you're doing within that role. And that's why we are really, really committed to having the best SENDco qualification that we can. Thank you, Andy. So the qualifications that we have been qualifications that have been looked at and revised, and in some cases new, as a result of the reform, the educational reform that I'm sure everybody has heard lots and lots or whispers about, depending on where you are within the sector. So the Level 3 Technical Specialist in Special Educational Needs Coordinators in Early Years Settings, that award is now the reform qualification that you'll be able to take from September this year. And that qualification will find itself being, it'll mirror the sorts of things that we had in our SENDco award, but we'll go on to look at that in a moment. And there's also one that I just want to bring to your attention, because as I say, whether you're working at level 2 or whether you're working at level 3, having an interest in SEND needs to be developed. It's not enough to be able to say, I'll take that role. I don't mind taking that role. That's not enough, because you've got an absolute massive responsibility to the children that you're working with. So there is here now a Level 2 Technical Specialist for the Early Years Special Educational Needs and Disabilities Coordinator Assistant, so that assistant could maybe shadow the Level 3 SENDco and could also gain some of those skills and really become, the knowledge that they gain, the knowledge that they need to have to be able to do that job, and supply the children and provide the children with the information and the experiences and so on that they need to be the best that they can be, and have the best experiences whilst they're with you. So two qualifications. One will feel very similar, and the other is a new qualification that we'll just look at a brief overview of those two qualifications now. So that Level 3, the Technical Specialist in Special Educational Needs Coordination in Early Years Settings, and that's an award. So it's designed to meet the needs of both 16 to 19 and adult learners who are interested in developing additional specialist competence in an educational occupation, and clearly aligns to the Institute for Apprenticeships and Technical Education, IFE, Skills England, hierarchy of purpose. So things are changing too quickly. The qualification offers an engaging course of study and provides learners with the opportunity to specialise within that occupational area. It builds on the outcomes within the Early Years Educator Occupational Standard and will enable those learners to acquire the knowledge, skills and behaviours required to develop additional specialist competence within education and early years. And this really is because people will say they've done the Level 3, they've done the Level 3 standard, or they've done a Level 3 qualification, which includes information around children with special educational needs, of course. But as I say, this is a role that is specialist, and it requires the development of knowledge and skill, and more importantly, that confidence to be able to lead and manage within an early years setting in relation to SENDco. So employers will be able to access reliable evidence of learners' achievement against the criteria, which are the minimum requirements for practice in a specialist role within the occupational area as a special educational needs coordinator. So I think we're in no doubt there that that small award, it's got a guided learning hours there of 24. It is a small qualification, as its previous predecessor qualification was, but there's a lot in there that builds from, that avoids repetition and duplication of what somebody may have done in their level 2 and level 3, but builds on that as a firm foundation and is building on the specialist roles that we looked at earlier on in this webinar. Thanks, Andy. Okay, so let's have a little look at what those units involve then. So these really are the headings of the learning outcomes that your students, that your learners will be studying. So Unit 1, the roles and responsibilities of the SENDCo. And that will cover things, that the obvious things like legislation. What does my role and responsibility really look and feel like? What does partnership working entail, or what could it potentially involve? And what sorts of things would I be looking for if I'm thinking of early identification of SEND? So it's bringing together the understanding of those 4 broad areas of need within the code of practice, for example, and trying to think really, what am I expecting? So it's bringing 4 areas of need and the knowledge, the professional knowledge of child development, and weaving that in through that all-important professional intervention of recognizing and identifying that something requires additional support in terms of maybe that's just activities and experiences, or maybe the child is requiring some further early referrals. Thank you, Andy. And Unit 2 is looking at the strategies. So we're building on the knowledge in Unit 1, and now we're thinking of that application of knowledge. So we're thinking about strategies and techniques for supporting children and their families. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that when we're working with any child, we're working fundamentally as well with their families to try and bring that coherence together. But actually, I guess it could be said that it might even be more significant when we think about children with SEND. So learners will be introduced to, if they don't already know, the graduated approach and how that works and how that builds on partnership working and the best consistent approaches for activities and experiences with children. It looks at English as an additional language, and absolutely acknowledge and appreciate that that alone is absolutely not a SEND at all. But what about ignoring any SEND behind that? Or let's remember that that's not a SEND. So we just look at that and those additional needs that a child may have when they're learning English as an additional language or acquiring English in this way. It introduces us to the education and healthcare plans. Now, I know, as with any sort of development and government development, these things change. So whether things around mainstream intervention and educational and healthcare plans will change, sometime in the future that might well be the case. And so but currently we're looking at education and healthcare plans. So again, there must be something in there to be able to support that. So if education and healthcare plans are removed down the line, that's going to be down the line. And also we need to know what's going to happen as a result of taking something out. So that's staying in. And also the importance of reflection and building on our own knowledge and our own sense of confidence within the area of special educational needs when we think of babies, children and their families. So 2 nice units building on what a student, what a learner may already have, or what a member of staff has already gained through previous qualifications, and really investing in that that interest and building and increasing the knowledge and skills and understanding there. This is a new qualification. So when we think about our cash level 2 technical specialist for the early years I'm going to keep saying it, Early Years Special Educational Needs and Disabilities Coordinator, that this one is looking at level 2 and perhaps in the role of the assistant there. And that's really, as I said before, to build on that interest, to gain that knowledge, and to really, for that member of staff or that learner who's taking that level 2, to really gain that understanding of the responsibility and the accountability that that significant role holds as a specialist role. So it's designed for those working as an early years practitioner, supporting the role of the early years special educational needs and/or disabilities coordinator, the SENDCo. And it will explore how the SENDCo assistant can work with babies, children, colleagues and others to support the SENDCo across the early years. And for me, it's more about finding out about that role and being able to grow into that role in a very formal, step-by-step way, gaining that knowledge and skills rather than just suddenly have to hit the ground running. And this, we can't do that. We can't afford to do that. We can't afford to be, I know we're all learning on the job as we go. Absolutely, whatever job we do, we learn something new every day. I appreciate that, but I think we need to be at least confident in the area and in that responsibility that we're going to hold. And that will build on the level 2, the EYP, occupational standard, and that's got a larger GLH because that will break things down and that will look at things in a little bit more detail to really get to grips with that role and to be able to support the SENDCo in the best way that we can. So let's take a look at that. Okay, maybe not. So the level 2 qualification, we know that we can share the specifications, the standards are available for you. So we'll be able to signpost you to those qualifications. Apologies for that, but you will find that it's going to build on exactly the same sorts of things that are covered in that level 3. So that's perhaps the reason why. And but breaking that down so that you're thinking about that role of the assistant. So make sure you have a look at our coming soon pages to be able to find that specification, and I'll try and find that and pop that into the chat later as well. So please may I introduce our guest speakers again. So we have Sian and Maria I know has also been joined by Victoria, and Victoria is the SENDCo who was trained through London Early Years Foundation when she was doing her SEND qualification. So we're going to enter into a bit of a Q&A session now, and I think we're going to start with Sian. Okay, now these, Sian, are going to come on one at a time. So here we go. And so first of all, welcome and thank you very much for your time. And I just wondered if you could, if we could start really, Sian, if you could tell us about the qualification, how it's been delivered previously, and who it's reaching. It is about 3 questions in one. So about how the qualification has been delivered previously, who it's reaching in terms of numbers, and the benefits of the fact that this is a funded qualification.
Yes, yeah, certainly. So good afternoon, everybody. So at Best Practice Network, we have delivered the Level 3 SENCO award via a DFE funded programme. We started that in 2022 in the sort of education recovery package suite of programmes. We've just been successful in receiving additional funding and a second contract from the Department for Education for delivery of the same programme. So it's been delivered in the previous iteration. It was delivered as a blended programme, very much designed to meet the specification in the DFE's role of the SENCO document. It was at that point, it was a 4-month online programme, so a mixture of taught, facilitated online sessions and blended learning packages that were sort of self-directed learning that took the participants through the programme. The aim of that programme was about very quickly in the post-pandemic phase, increasing the number of SENCos who were qualified in early years settings. So that was reaching people in private, voluntary and independent nurseries, group-based provision. So that's what the DFE class has, the sort of the range of early years provision that operates on non-domestic premises. But Janet, picking up on your point, most importantly, it also included childminders. And for us, that was really important, that for a long time, childminders have been asking for funded qualifications to be available to them. So that was really important. So that was who it was reaching. It wasn't actually available for those in the school sector, in maintained nursery schools, and that was quite deliberate on the part of DFE, because there is obviously a QTS SENCo role in schools, and the aim of this qualification was actually to support practitioners who were working with babies and young children. So in terms of the numbers, it's been a fantastic qualification. In the first round, just over 5,500 people completed the qualification in a 2-year programme, and we've got funding for an additional 1,000 places at the moment. What would I say are the benefits of the qualification? Well, it's recognising, again, Janet, picking up on what you said, that the valuable role that SENCos play in early years settings. It's giving them that time to invest in a qualification. It's giving them the opportunity to explore the role of the SENCo, the legislation, the levels of funding in early years, but it's also giving them that confidence, the confidence to do the role, and importantly to network with other SENCos, because it can be quite an isolating role, being a SENCo in an early years setting. So actually having groups of SENCos come together to share experiences, to gain insight from one another, has also been really effective.
Fantastic, thank you. That's great, Sian, thank you. And I think we're going to have another question just floating in a moment. Okay. Okay, so do you see any benefit of the qualification attracting funding now? And I guess, you know, you sort of alluded to that and how important it is, and great that it's being funded and continuing to be funded. But what do you see any benefit in that, in terms of who it'll attract, sort of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, it's no secret that we're incredibly underfunded in the early years sector, and CPD is often one of those things that settings really struggle to include if we're faced with rising costs of running a nursery business. The benefit of attracting the funding, I think, has meant that more people can access the qualification. We've seen those that are in the SENCo role formalise their qualification. So people who might have been doing the SENCo role informally for a number of years have finally gained a qualification. But also those that are aspiring SENCos, people who are looking for that next point in their career, coming onto the programme and thinking, yeah, this is the direction that I want to go into, and having that opportunity to gain a qualification at no expense to the individual or the organisation. What can I say? We've had 1,000 funded places in this second wave, which is a lot less than the 5,000 places that we had in the first wave, and we've been oversubscribed, completely overwhelmed with applications, which shows us that there is a huge demand in the sector. We also know that there's quite a lot of churn in the SENCo role, so people move on to other settings, or they might move on to, once they've gained a SENCo qualification, they might move on to an enhanced role in a local authority, or become part of a training team within a larger early years chain, perhaps. So we know that settings are continually having to replace SENCos, or, as you said, Janet, train an assistant SENCo, depending on the size of the provision and the needs of the children. So absolutely, we all need to do everything we can, I think, to carry the message that it's a really important qualification, and it's something that the government needs to continue to fund.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I wholeheartedly agree. And I think, wasn't that long ago, was it, when it was just if you're interested, or you working with children with special educational needs, or you haven't got a particular role or responsibility within this setting, that you would just take that on without really knowing and without having the knowledge that you would need to be able to do that role, and that qualification is giving that information, and that's the right thing. That's what the babies and children and the families deserve, of course. Okay, one last question for you, Sian, I think, unless another one comes floating in. What are the key highlights for you and the team of delivering this particular NCFE cash qualification? Now, I know it'll be the previous level 3, but it is very similar in terms of its pre-reform content. So what have been the key highlights for you and the team?
I think, again, going back to what you said at the beginning, we all work in early years because we want to make a difference to children and their families ultimately. And I think the biggest benefit for us is that we are improving outcomes for children with special educational needs and disabilities via this qualification. Be that because we've empowered SENCos to understand more about their role, to advocate for children and their families, but also to be able to provide specialist provision within their settings. So it's absolutely about improving outcomes for children. But the SENCos themselves, it's about validating that role. Like you said, Janet, a lot of them have been doing it. It's been a bolt-on to perhaps other responsibilities they've had in the setting. And this is an opportunity to recognise and value the importance of the role. But we had over 90% of our SENCos say to us they felt much more knowledgeable and confident about the role that they were doing as a direct impact of gaining this qualification, because sometimes they'd been putting provision in place for children and they knew that's the right thing to do, because that's what we do in early years. We're doing our best for children. But now that they understand the graduated approach, the legislation that goes behind it, they're much more confident in being an advocate for children, and they know who to reach out to in the local authority, for example. I think also it's a benefit to the wider setting. So yes, this is for SENCos or aspiring SENCos, but I would argue that every practitioner working in early years should have some understanding of the SEN code of practice and the role of the SENCO. So actually what we found is that we've created a merry band, if you like, of advocates for SEN training, and people who are going back into their settings and training their colleagues, disseminating what they've learned because they're so enthusiastic about the role. So multiple benefits on multiple levels.
That's brilliant. Thank you. And I think, our babies, our children, as you said, they deserve, they don't just need, they deserve to be cared for and educated by staff who are trained within this role. And it is absolutely fantastic that we can now say that this is a specialist role that has been recognised by the Department for Education in terms of criteria, indicators and so on. So it's a win-win for the sector and for the children. So long may that funding continue. Thank you, Sian. Thank you for sharing that with us. Okay, so as we move on, okay, Maria. So Maria Gonzalez, who is the SEND manager at London Early Years Foundation, I've just got one or two questions for you, Maria, if I may. Please, could you just tell us about the programme, the actual programme that you've been delivering, and why you think it's been so successful at the London Early Years Foundation? Thanks, Maria.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So LEAF, we are an organization that have 40 nurseries in London. So we thought that will be important that our SENCos are informed and have the qualifications to do their role the best as they can possibly do. So therefore, the last few years, we have introduced that into our London Institute, which we also have a training department, and that's where I come, is to train all the SENCos at LEAF. At the moment, there is 85% of the SENCos that are already with the qualifications. Of course, as was mentioned, the people tend to move on into their roles, and that's why we keep rolling this qualification program. So to me, being a SEND manager at LEAF and working directly with the SENCos as part of my role, I can say that it's a luxury to be also their tutor and assessor, because within the classes that we deliver, we can link very much to the practice, what I see, the observations, and also their comments. So the practical side is very much involved within the sessions that I deliver. I believe that also gives that close professional relationship between the SENCos and myself, not as only a SEND manager, but also their tutor that is there to support them. So, and the benefit of completing this training is that the SENCO's confidence in not only supporting the children with SEND, but also supporting the parents, the families, it is quite significant, because their knowledge, they become, as it was mentioned about the services that are available in the local authorities, they become more knowledgeable about the legislation, the SEND Code of Practice, and the link with the UFS. So consequently, they become more assertive in what they can advocate for children, and the relationships with other professionals from the local authority will be stronger, and they can kind of underpin why they want that support for the families and the children.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Maria. And I think that is what you've described there, that triangulation between that advocacy, not just, and that relationship, not just between the learner, the member of staff, and the child, but also with the family, also with the local authority and any other external agencies as appropriate. And that does take a lot of confidence and having the knowledge to be able to sit on and to be able to work from is really important. So thank you for sharing those successes from LEAF. So from your perspective then, Maria, do you see any benefit of the qualification attracting funding now?
Well, we would like to continue to, upskill our SENCos, and of course, having the level 2, as we are underfunded, as always, early years, is the way that it is. Our SENCos are based in the rooms, so having a level 2 SEND or co-coordinator or assistant, whatever we want to name, it is quite beneficial, because sometimes what I think the SENCos find challenging is the fact that they are based in the room, which can be the preschool, and then they do not have the opportunity to actually interact in a more consistent way with perhaps children that are in the toddlers room that also have needs. So of course that creates some more extra effort to get to know those children where they are not based on, and to build that connections with the colleagues. And as was already mentioned in here, it is quite important that the SENCO also has the confidence to cascade the information and the knowledge that that they receive, not only the knowledge on how to supporting the children, again, is about the knowledge how to reassuring parents that we are there to support the children and the family itself. So I do really think that is very welcome, that level 2, in order for, and I do agree with the with what was said, that everybody should be aware of the SEND Code of Practice. Everybody should be aware what is available with the services in the community, and everybody should be confident in supporting and the children, and reassuring the parents that the support is there, and that they will do our best for the children to access that support, the children and the families. So will be more than welcome. And understanding how to proceed in cases for requesting additional support, and I'm talking about SEN funding, it is important that SENCos are very confident in that, because sometimes can be very challenging, especially in cross boroughs, which some of the things we have to apply to the local authority that the nursery is placed. Some elements we have to apply for the local authority that where the child has a GP. So, and all of this information gained through the SENDCo qualifications, it is important for their day-to-day job.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Maria. And there's always a lot more to it, isn't there, in terms of those logistics and making sure that the baby, the child, the family have got access to everything that they need, and that you've got, you know, where to go to be able to get that specialist support and intervention. So thank you. Okay, so I think this is your final question, Maria. I'm always nervous when they come floating in, just in case another one sneaks in, but we'll see. What areas of growth in the individuals have been the most impactful following the completion of the course? So you have described there in what you've said already about, you know, the confidence and the knowledge, and that you would like everybody to have a shared knowledge of some sorts. But is there anything that's really sort of stuck with you as being this impact, this difference in practice is a direct result of doing the qualification, for example?
I do think that we early years in the earlier sector, we have the natural instinct to support, you know, and to fight for the best, for, you know, for children and their families. However, and that is what I think that has empowered the SENCos, having the legislation that back us up with all of these, you know, all of these resources that we want to get for children, has made a higher impact on their confidence in advocating for those children and families. So understanding the SEND code of practice aligned with the UIFS, it has given that opportunity for them to, you know, to back them up for what they have been asking for. Another thing that I do think is, you know, the local offer and what is available in there, and signposting parents to workshops or play and stay sessions that increase the home learning the environment, and because we can do as much as we can do, but align it with what parents can do behind the nursery. It's strong actually that that partnership and that support that the children will be receiving, and by having that knowledge of signposting parents can have a high impact on the home learning environment. Therefore, I think that, well, the SENCos that I have been working with, they are much more confident in searching for that services that are available.
I think that's fantastic, Maria, because I think all the way through, you know, both from myself, Sean, and also Maria, I think that the importance of gaining that confidence, being able to make sense of the knowledge around that legislation and of child development and the requirements of the early years foundation stage, and bringing that together. And sometimes that's a difficult thread to pull together, and that's why I think the qualifications such as this level 2 and level 3 are really helpful in being able to do that and pave the way for that. And of course it is the knowledge and the skill and the CPD in a nice short package, really, either at level 3 or at level 2, that brings that very significant knowledge to the early years educator and practitioner to be able to do the job of that advocate. So all of these things are things that are coming through from the panel today so far. So Maria, thank you very, very much. I think we are going to hear now from Victoria. So Victoria, I know you are in the role of SENDCo at Bushy Tails Nursery and Preschool, which is fantastic. And you've also been taught by London Early Years Foundation. What difference do you think the qualification has made to your practice and your level of confidence, perhaps as a SENDCo?
Hello, everyone. I think it's been touched on throughout this session is the confidence. I'm a relatively new SENCo for the past 2 years, so you can learn as much as you can through your own CPD. However, having a dedicated course that teaches you the legislation, that gives you that confidence to reach out for other services when they are needed or where appropriate, knowing who to contact is vital to the role of a SENCo. And for me, it really has given me the confidence to be able to do that, to seek that out, to work with our families, and for them to feel more confident in my abilities to support their child. Once they know that I have a qualification, they sit back and go, okay, I'm going to accept your support and what it is you think we need to put in place for our child. Let's work together. And I think it's really fostered strong partnerships with parents of the children I am supporting. On the other side of that, in the setting, being able to develop my other colleagues and to identify their skills when working with children who may have an additional need or SEND, because they can be not confident in that. They kind of go, this is what we do, and I'm not sure how that would be impactful or help this child. So actually working with them to develop their understanding, their knowledge, and to boost their confidence so that they are able to work with our children to provide the best outcomes that we can, has been the big difference in how I take my role as a SENCo and bring it back into the setting.
I think that's fantastic, Victoria. And I think, you know, seeing that other side of the role in terms of being that the one who cascades, the one who advises, the one who supports, not just liaising with the parent and carer, but also the importance of making sure that there is a consistent approach, that other members of the team, including students and apprentices who might be on board within that setting, have that understanding of what your role is and what you do, and any implications for individual children, because you know it's easy to sort of develop strategies, isn't it, and things when you're, but what you need to do is work with the SENDCo to make sure that what you're doing is consistent and is going to have a really good impact for that individual child. Okay, that's fantastic. I think we might have some more questions, Victoria. So what advice would you give to individuals thinking about doing a qualification around SEND?
I would highly recommend it. I think it's going to help you, again, provide that support, build that confidence, and empower you to be the best SENCo that you can, for yourself, for your families, and for your colleagues, and really sit within the role with that confidence and that knowledge and that foundation of understanding of the complexities and sensitivities surrounding SEND.
Fantastic, thank you. And I think, you know, all the way through what's come through the panel is that importance. I wrote a few things down: the confidence, the collaboration, the relationships, the advocacy, the significance of legislation and making sense of bringing it together with the EYFS and knowledge of child development. All of those things, and the need to be aware. It's great to build, to have that interest, but we must build on that, mustn't we, through a qualification that brings all of those things that we've been talking about in the panel today together. And that's the intention and the purpose of these qualifications that have been recognised by the Department for Education as having a specialist role when it comes to working in the early years sector. Okay, so Sian, Maria, Victoria, thank you so much for joining the panel and for sharing your wonderful wealth of knowledge and experience with us today. Thank you. Over to you, Andy.
Yeah, thanks everybody. That's really insightful, and it was good to hear, obviously, the voice of people on the ground, of real life delivery, and actually using those qualifications. So thank you for that. So on this one, I'll touch on this because we have had a couple of questions in the chat around about this. So what we've got on here, there's as Janet said, we've had the level 3 and below education reforms, and as part of cycle 1, the first qualifications go live on the 1st of August 2025. And the main impact of the reforms is the change in the funding and what's available in the funded landscape with regards to the reform qualifications. So just to, I suppose, highlight first where we would normally we would launch a new qualification and we would withdraw the legacy or the current qualification. We're not doing that in this case for these qualifications, apart from one, which is the level 3 Montessori pedagogy qualification, and that's basically it's like for like qualification, and it wasn't funded fully, and the funding does run out on the 31st of July, so there was no benefit of keeping that one live. We are keeping the other qualifications, like legacy qualifications, live, and the main reason is because some of them are retaining devolved ESF funding through the Merrill Combined Authority or Greater London Authority, or are available in Wales or international market, or as part of an apprenticeship. So where we've got learners in aren't affected by the changes within the reforms, we are making sure those qualifications are live. With regards to the level 3 SENDCo qual and the level 2 SENDCo qual, they are both available for 16 to 19 and adult and 19 plus learners. The big benefit has already been mentioned is that the old legacy qualification only received funding for 16 to 19 learners. The new qualification does attract 16 to 19 funding, adult skills fund both nationally and regionally, tailored learning and free courses for jobs for the level 3, and then the same for the level 2, but instead of getting free courses for jobs, it does get local flexibility. So it does open those qualifications up for a wider learners to be able to get funded to do these qualifications and enter the roles of special educational need coordinators. As you said, the level 2 is a new qualification, and under the child development and wellbeing sector skills area, that is the highest area, the most qualifications we've got being launched as part of the reforms. So as I say, we'll leave these slides will be shared after the event, so you can see that. But I think the main thing I just want to highlight is where you are using the qualifications in England, the recommendation just move to the new qualification. Where you're using them outside of England, the legacy current qualification will be there. There's also been a question in there about direct observations for learners within new courses, and one of the recommended assessment methods is a direct observation of learners in the assessment. Janet's just put the link to the specifications. The specifications are on our coming soon page rather than the main website at the minute, and this is because by getting them approved through the reforms, we've got them on the coming soon page. On the 1st of August, the qualifications will be live on the normal qualification search page, so people can register on them, but you can download the draft specifications from the coming soon page on our website, which Janet just put the link into the chat. And then we go, and then we've just got some useful links there. Again, to the qualification specifications, some of the legislation links on there as well that may be useful for people to look at. Just looking at any other questions in the chat. Can I also confirm the new level 3 diploma introduced last year has also been withdrawn and is now the technical level? Janet, are you? I believe that's the one that hasn't it?
Yes, so the level 3 diploma for working in the early years sector, and I'm going to assume we're talking about that sort of in the realm of adult learning now. That is going to be replaced. It'll still be there, but it won't have the funding. So you're looking for the technical version of that, and that is the first one on that coming soon page in that list of qualifications. So if you open that link, if you copy that link before you leave the call this afternoon and look at that first qualification, you'll notice that it's the same content as the diploma for working in the early years sector, slightly different title because of technical being part of the title in that we needed to confirm to for the reform. But yes, you'll find that there.
Yeah, and then we just had a question there from Tracy. Will the content change of the draft specifications at all? We're not expecting anything. It's basically we're just going through our final proofreading and going through the process before they go on to the main website page.
Yeah, I would certainly say they're fine for planning. They're fine for looking at if there are going to be tweaks. It will be simple tweaks and not to any content structure or meaning. So yeah, you should be able to use that fine for your planning.
Good. I don't think we've got any of that. I think we've covered all the questions in the chat. No, nothing else in the chat. I say that we did have a question about using Wales, and I will take that away and have a look at that from our about. And it was around, Janet, the legislation in Wales, just whether the qualifications would fit that criteria.
Something we can chat about, Andy, and see what we can do to bring that forward, because it's such a worthy qualification. So thank you for raising that.
Yeah. And just the last check on the questions. And yes, Tracy, the recording and the slides will be sent out to everybody that's signed up for this, so you do get to enjoy it over and over again, and obviously the great insight from the people we've had on this webinar. So I think if that's it, if there's no further questions, I'll just again thank you to Janet and the panel members for their great insight into the role of SENDCo, and for everybody else for attending. I hope you found this very useful.
Thank you.
Right.